I'm Don Carpentier. I've dedicated my life to learning and teaching historic trades. And during this time, I've met some tremendous craftsmen, tinsmiths, stone cutters, silversmiths, glass blowers. These people have worked very hard to rediscover lost processes and formulas of their trades. I believe it's really important that their work be preserved, and I'd like to show it to you. The Great American Craftsman series is dedicated to preserving their work.
The ceramic trade in Britain grew from a cottage business in the mid-18th century to one of the most sophisticated and technically developed industries in the world by the late 19th century. During the course of this development, many great potters such as Josiah Wedgwood and engineers like Matthew Boulton worked diligently to invent new pottery bodies, glazes, and countless machines to speed up production and increase refinement. The programmable rose and crown engine turning lathe allowed a variety of incised ornamentations to be made with precision. The Jolly Jigger machines were used to make pot bodies. The introduction of such time-saving devices was put off for nearly 20 years to avoid labor riots by the skilled workers they would eventually replace. Transfer printing supplemented the work of hundreds of paintresses, creating production line techniques where only hard-earned dexterity had existed. The bottle oven, or kiln, was developed in the potteries, allowing massive firings of thousands of vessels at once. This led to Wedgwood's pyrometer, which in turn led to the melting cone, all necessary steps in governing the degree of heat in the kilns. Unrefined earthenware gave way to increasingly refined red stoneware, red earthenware, white-bodied creamware, basalt, jasperware, and in a further refinement of creamware, pearlware, blue-tinted whiteware imitating the appearance of widely popular Chinese porcelains. Most of the refined earthenware found in American households from the third quarter of the 18th century to the mid-19th century were produced in British potteries. Today, there is an increased interest in the various types of early industrial pottery. Don Carpentier has redeveloped some of these early techniques at Eastfield Village, his school and laboratory for the historic trades near Albany, New York.
Good morning. Welcome to Eastfield. This is my studio, and Denise and I work in here reproducing late 18th and early 19th century pottery. We've spent 4 years now developing a lot of the techniques that we'll show you. And today I'd like to actually show you how to make this mug. It's an earthworm decorated, say, 1810 tankard. And this London-style bowl, which would have been made, so say, from 1820 to about 1840, which has dendritic decoration on it. And this shell edge plate, which is kind of called a Rococo shell edge plate, which would have been made anywhere from about 1790 to about 1810. And all this stuff was made by machinery, which I've reproduced and done a lot of research on now. In order to make these things today, we'll have to use this machinery, which I'd like to show you now. First, we're going to work on the Jigger Jolly machine. It was developed in the early 19th century to replace people having to throw pots. The mug bodies, first thing we're going to make are going to be done in a plaster mold. A knife that forms the inside of the mug goes up here. Clay goes down inside.
The clay is a low-fire white earthenware that will be fired to about 1900 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the proper quantity of clay is carefully placed in the bottom of the mold, the knife is brought down slowly, forcing the clay out and up the sides, creating a compressed, hollow body. The Jolly machine is basically the same machine as its 19th century counterpart, with the exception of the electric motor. This process allowed factory owners to hire less skilled labor and reduce operating costs. Each mug body comes out the exact same size. Now the finished mug body needs to be put someplace warm where it will shrink. Then it can be easily removed from the mold.
Now that our mugs have had a little bit of time to set up and get into the leather hard state, we have to bring them over to the turner's lathe, which is where all the refinement of these mugs takes place.
The first step is to cut the foot into the body. This is accomplished with a simple tool that has been shaped to the profile of the foot. This allows the foot to be produced quickly and uniformly. The leather-hard clay is very easy to cut and permits fine details. Once the foot is completed, Don levels the base of the mug so it sits evenly. When that's accomplished, he hollows out the underside of the mug, reducing its mass. He puts his mark on the bottom of the mug to prevent it from being mistaken for a period example. Now he thins the side walls of the vessel. The wall is about 5/8 of an inch thick when it comes from the jolly. Don shaves it to about 1/8 inch. With a good sharp tool and just the right consistency of the clay, the thinning happens quickly. These were intended to be very inexpensive pots during the early 19th century. As such, speed of production was essential. Under factory conditions, the turner had to work rapidly. Now the cutting is finished. The next step is to reverse the lathe and begin polishing. This is important because the polishing removes defects from the surface and compresses the clay, making it stronger. And now for the fun part. It is time to decorate the mug. First, Don chooses a roulette. He starts with a triple row of beads forming a band around the rim of the mug. This is performed with a rouletting wheel with a deeply incised pattern. As the tool is held against the revolving clay body, the pattern is impressed. For dipped wares, as many as 80 different patterns have been recorded. This particular tool is one of several that Don has reproduced following original designs. The application of a colored slip is next. Don has created many based on surviving examples and accumulated shards. Color tests have verified the recipes he has developed, in a method paralleling the original potters, namely trial and error. Now he adds black bands to the rim and foot. A gentle squeeze of the bottle and a band of slip appears instantly. The line is amazingly crisp. Notice that the wet slip isn't the same color as what the fired and glazed pot will be. Next, he adds 2 blue bands. The field color will be a type of yellow seen frequently on period examples. This one will have earthworm decoration. The slip was originally applied with a blowing bottle. It was a long-necked globular ceramic vessel with a goose quill coming out of one side. Modern plastic squeeze bottles now replace these large, clumsy, and fragile artifacts. In the period, they needed a different blowing bottle for each color slip in use. Now it's time to look at the worming pot. This is a 3-chambered device made either of tin or pottery. This is a pearlware reproduction of one inscribed William Shaw, 1833, in the collection of the City Museum of Stoke-on-Trent in Staffordshire. It has a quill coming out of each of the 3 compartments, held in position with clay. Each compartment holds a different slip color. With the quills positioned just so, when the device is tipped forward, the slips run into the quills and produce a single drop in the 3 discrete colors. It is suspected that this tool comes into use around 1810. Now he adds the decoration known to potters as cable or common cable, but known to collectors as earthworm. A single tricolored drop on a pot is called a cat's eye by collectors, as no period term has yet come to light. By overlapping the cat's eyes, the turner created cable. With the decoration complete, a handle needs to be extruded and applied. By squeezing clay through a shaped die, the consistently oval cross-section of the handle is achieved. Then it's cut to length. The foliate terminals are formed by pressing into a carved plaster mold. The handle is quickly twisted into shape. Patches of slip are scraped away. the body scratched, then touched with fluid slip to provide secure adhesion. The handle is pressed into position. It was important to secure the handle, as workmen were only paid for saleable items good from oven. Records indicate that potters sold inferior pots as seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, and even sevenths. Completely damaged ware became landfill. Now it's time to jolly the body of a London-style bowl. Initially appearing in porcelain teawares in 1807, the London shape was quickly adapted by pottery manufacturers as the latest style. It continued to be stylish to about 1860. The knife forces the clay against the mold wall, creating the smoothly finished inside of the bowl. As with the mug, once it is dried, it can be easily removed from the mold. The foot is cut with a tool reproduced from an original period profile. Originally, the power to turn the lathes was produced by foot treadles, often run by children. Since speed was so important, the child had to know every move the turner made and could anticipate the need to go fast, slow down, speed up, and reverse. That child was very much a part of the turner's livelihood. It's estimated that some factories might have produced a daily volume of 1,000 of these bowls. The device pushing against the foot was developed by Don to keep the bowls from sliding off the mandrel once the wet slip is applied. It also eliminates the necessity of smoothing the rim, for originally the rim was forced against a wooden mandrel and the bowl was cut off when the decoration was completed. The slip field on this bowl must be thicker than on the mug. This will allow the dendritic decoration to bloom fully. Here we have the only instance in all diptware production where a brush is used. The brush, loaded with an acidic mixture containing stale urine, is touched to the wet surface and the fluid ramifies instantly into the familiar pattern. The trees blossom from a single drop as if by magic. It is this design that produced the term mocha, in that this dendritic pattern resembles the markings of moss agate, which was imported to London in the 18th century through the Arabian port of Mocha, today El-Mocha in Yemen. Moss agate was used in jewelry making. Some early documents indicate that the child performed this part of the decoration. The bowl looks like an intricate landscape painting. It is put aside to dry. Now Don is going to jigger a plate. The first step is to produce a thin clay pancake called a bat, which is done on the batting out machine. The bat is polished smooth. This was done originally by the batting out boy, who flattened a ball of clay into the pancake by striking it with a large block of plaster. The bat is placed polished side down over the top of the plate mold. Don uses a wet sponge to press out the air from beneath the bat. He works from the back side of the plate, which is known as jiggering. Working from the inside when making a bowl or a mug is known as jollying. As the blade of the machine is lowered, the back of the plate is formed. Prior to the introduction of the jigger, the blade was often made of clay and held by hand. The mechanical jiggering process came into general use around 1840 for plate making. Now the plate is finished, and it must dry and shrink in a warm place. Once it is dry, it will lift cleanly off the mold. Next, the ragged edges of the plate are removed in a process called fettling. A small tool, a fettling knife, is used to scrape away the leather hard fringe. Then, using a slightly damp sponge, the edge is cleaned, removing any marks left by the knife. The plate Don is making could be either creamware or pearlware, depending on the glaze. Before glazing, objects are biscuit fired at a higher temperature to solidify the body. The clear lead glaze for creamware typically was contaminated with iron and manganese oxides, giving the ware its typically yellow cast, whereas pearl glaze included small amounts of cobalt to act as a whitener. After dipping in the glaze, these biscuit-fired shell-edged wares usually had either blue or green oxides brushed into the glaze at the rims. The original potters often used bare hands to dip the wares into the lead glaze, often leaving fingerprints which remain on the finished objects. The water in the glaze is quickly absorbed by the biscuit body, fixing the glaze, which allows the ware to be set down right away. An ornamental green glaze is added to the rouletted band on the mug and to the handle terminals too. Don places these objects in the kiln on stilts to prevent the glaze from adhering to the kiln shelves. Electric kilns fire very cleanly, unlike 18th century coal-fired kilns, when the ware was initially placed in refractory clay boxes called saggers. Depending on the size of the objects being fired, saggers could hold from 100 to 300 vessels in a kiln firing of many thousands. This practice isolated groups of wares from the danger of blowouts and other firing mishaps, while at the same time reducing the exposure to ash and fumes. Today, much of this pottery has disappeared. Its low-cost utilitarian nature and its basic fragility doomed it. That which remains is prized because of its role in history, as well as its visual appeal.
Well, there's our finished mug, and I certainly hope you enjoyed getting to see how this was made today. These processes kind of fell out of favor in the early 20th century with the introduction of newer machines for making these pots with big presses and with the casting process, and also the whole concept of factory-produced pottery as an art form fell out of favor with the Japanese introduction and the whole idea of Zen pottery getting involved in the fire and the clay and the whole feeling and concept of your pot. So these are things that you won't see much anymore. It's just not done very much anymore, and this was kind of a rare opportunity for you to see this sort of thing. And I hope you enjoyed it.